Can you go back on a job offer after signing a contract? While it's not the best, the short answer is yes, you can. So if ever was looking for something quick, you can jump now. But if you're wondering whether you should or you shouldn't do it, then stick around. Unfortunately, I've had to go back on a job offer after I'd already signed a contract. And was it the best decision? Well, I'm very happy with where I ended up now, but people will tell you that you should or that you shouldn't on both sides, so I'll give you the ins and outs to help you make the right decision. And if you hang on until the end, I'll also go through how you can communicate that in the best way to the employer who made you the offer. People's first question is typically, can they sue me and will I be financially liable for not joining the role because I signed a contract? I mean, read your employment contract, but in most cases, you're only liable for the damages that your employer incurred from you not joining. So in some cases, if you received a signing bonus or they paid for some course for your learning and development, then it's safe to assume that you'll have to pay that back. Outside of that, for most roles, bar the most senior roles, legal fees are just not worth the time and energy to bring you on board. So the employer will not likely go through that process because they have better things to do. If you see it from their perspective, they also don't want someone who really doesn't want to be there. And it will end up being more expensive for them if you join and then hand in your notice in a couple of weeks and they have to go through hiring all over again. So no, they're not going to sue you. Decisions. Let's cut to a 10-second dance break. The next concern is typically burning your bridges and preventing yourself from having future opportunities because you've built that reputation for yourself. Now, realistically, this is a concern and you're probably not going to want to make this a habit of going back on job offers that you've already signed and accepted. That being said, do you really want to be stuck in a role that's not going to fulfill you just because you didn't want to have a difficult conversation? Probably not. And I do think there is variation between different industries, or if you work in smaller places where people talk a lot, it can leave a bad reputation. So mainly what you want to make sure is that you do have a very good reason as to why you're accepting the other role. I would also caveat, be very careful if you're going to a competitor, if your employer has handed you any kind of confidential information. Your contract may actually forbid you from working for a competitor. So in that case, I'd suggest talking to an employment lawyer to make sure that you're covered. But provided you're not going to a competitor, you're moving within an industry and it's not super close knit, then you're going to be fine. This brings me on to, why are you actually doing this? Why are you considering going back on a job offer? And I think this normally lands you onto the fact that you probably don't know exactly what you want to be doing, because if you were truly happy with the role, you wouldn't be looking at or considering something else. If the reason you're moving on is for more money, then don't forget that your current employer could also make you a counter offer. Make sure that at least you've looked at that option. But something else for you to think about if you're only moving on just for more money. We never ever know what's actually going to happen. The job offer I turned down was with an amazing company, an incredible culture, and I'd signed the contract, but then I found that I wasn't quite comfortable that it was going to be a drop in pay compared to my current role. So I ended up going back on that offer, even though I'd signed the contract, staying at my current employer so that I could maintain that salary. And while yes, salary is incredibly important, do you know what happened? Fast forward 6 months, COVID happens, we all have to take a pay cut because COVID, and in the end I ended up with less money than I would have had at that other employer because that other employer didn't have pay cuts. So there's no guarantee that that money is always going to be there. So my suggestion would be, don't move just for the money. Make sure there are other things that make that job worthwhile to you, because there's no guarantee, unfortunately, that that money is always going to be there. That's just my experience, but something for you to think about. So what you want to think about is, at each stage, what are the pros and cons of what the role can bring you? And that can include the role that you're going to have, the learning opportunities that you're going to have, the mentors that you can have within that business, the mission of the company. So if you're not quite sure what you want to do, I have a whole other video for that. So do check it out. But you really want to start questioning yourself and trying to understand what is important for you so that you're not constantly flitting between different positions and different opportunities. You want to make sure that you have a little bit of consistency within your CV and within your career. So, with that in mind, what are your reasons for leaving? You may have heard the expression that the grass is greener, not on the other side, but rather where you water it. So have you come to a really good reason why you're leaving your job? Make sure you've got those reasons really clear in your head and that you're getting those met by the new role. Because if you're just jumping, trying to find something different without having exhausted your options and giving it a go where you are, it's possible that you'll find that same problem somewhere else. An example for that is if you think that there are no progression opportunities within your current company and that's why you're moving on. First of all, have you even had that conversation with your employer? Perhaps they could say there's an opening in another department that could offer you more opportunities. Perhaps they can build some progression and more opportunities into your role. So I definitely recommend having that conversation first. But before you go off and reject another offer that could give you more opportunities, make sure that your current employer gives you in writing how they're going to plan and how they're going to actually build that into your role. So don't just take empty promises, make sure you get that in writing and that there is a clear plan for your progression. If there is a perfect job, don't let money or salary be the only reason that you turn it down. In fact, if you're at the negotiation stages, you could ask if your salary can be reviewed after 6 months if you're doing a great job and outline what you need to do to show your employer that you're committed, but also to understand that they're committed to your development as well. So how do you actually do it? The dreaded messaging that you've signed the contract, they're so happy to have you on board, and then you're not going to join. It's not great. So the first thing you want to do is, if you were hired by a recruiter or they were involved in the process, you're going to want to give them a heads up, because I will be honest, they will be gutted. They normally make 10 to 15% of your salary as commission on you joining that role. So you want to let them know so that they find out from you. I suggest giving them a call, explaining your reasons, and then being firm, because it's likely they will try and make you change your mind, or they will try and negotiate with you. So that brings me on to the second and third things that you want to make sure you do in that communication. So the second is let them know as quickly as possible. Once you've made your decision, don't hold off and procrastinate. You know you're going to do it because it's an uncomfortable conversation, but think about it as the earlier you tell them, the longer they have to find someone else who they perhaps needed to start on a particular day. Hiring is a long and painful process, so the more time you give them, the more grateful they will be, even though it's not great news. And the third point is to make sure that you have a really good reason. Go back and watch this whole video again if you haven't. You need to have a good reason as to why you're moving on, whether that's, you've been offered a great progression, a great learning opportunity in your current role, you've been offered another opportunity which more closely aligns to your vision and your mission, and you want to thank them very much. Pick up the phone, because they've put a lot of effort into getting you on board. Pick up the phone and explain to them you're really sorry, and you're very grateful for the time that they put into that, into hiring you, into finding you, and into bringing you on board. Unfortunately, you found another position that is a better fit for you, and wish them the best of luck in finding someone else. In summary, the answer, should you go back on a job offer or shouldn't you, is really one for you to figure out, but hopefully I've given you some questions to think about, so you can decide what the best thing is for you. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Eva Evangelou, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe to get access to new career videos every Friday. Have a great week.